To be honest with you, I thought it was on bottom. This has got to be one of the biggest largemouth I've caught. Can you see that Rapala scatter wrap in there? That big largemouth just inhaled this thing.
Let's go fishing. People, when you're in the mood, let's go fishing. Well, it's just me and you. Head on down to the fishing hole. Grab your hat, get your pole. Let's go fishing when you're in the mood.
Canadian Sport Fishing is brought to you by Rapala, premium fishing gear crafted from experience. Yamaha, conquer outdoors. INSEGT Defend Patch, deep-free protection from biting insects. Dickies, quality workwear since 1922.
Okay. Small one, but that's okay. You know, this is kind of neat. We're in November. Most people don't fish for largemouth bass this late in the year. I'm doing a couple of unique things. One is fishing for largemouth when the water temperature is pretty cold. And the other one, I'm fishing out of a new craft. This is called the NuCanoe. Now, that's a small guy. He's got the one hook, back hook in his mouth. See, the one thing about largemouth bass, they're part of the sunfish family. That guy's only about, I'd say, 11 inches long. But look at how prominent that stripes, the bars that go down the lateral line are. It looks so beautiful. One thing about largemouth, when the water gets cold, they get very lethargic. So even for hitting lures, I'm fishing a crankbait right now. It's actually one of the new scatter wraps. It's called the Scatter Wrap Crank by Rapala. And I'm looking for some active fish. But as the water temperatures fall, in November, they're already cold. In many lakes, it's below 50 degrees Fahrenheit. They literally sit on the bottom and actually move out from the shoreline. So you can see here, we're fishing a shoreline of this lake, and you can see some weeds. But what I'm doing is casting out from shore and trying to work like the first structure break, where it goes down to maybe 8-10 feet. As the water temperatures drop, the bass, especially the largemouth, will move out even deeper into deeper water. And sometimes they'll go as deep as 30-40 feet. And they'll winter there. So normally people don't angle for them. Not in Canada anyway. Maybe in some of the states, you know, where temperatures don't get as cold. So what I'm doing here is just trying to cover this area with crankbait. And then I'm going to try switching to a soft plastic. I've got a tube hanging, you can see, off the other rod right there. But you know, this is kind of nice. I got Mulligan with me, our puppy. She doesn't mind fishing out of a kayak or a canoe or a boat, but this NuCanoe is very interesting. You can see that it's got a leaning bar that's at the front, so I can actually stand up and cast like I was. It's got a very comfortable seat. Reminds me of a bass boat seat. And then you can see it's got rod holders. So if I want to do a little bit of trolling later, which I may, to try to locate some of the bigger fish in deeper water, I can put the rods in the rod holder. So even if you're fly fishing or doing other types of fishing, this is ideal because you can lean against this. It actually just gives you something to anchor yourself on, and it's very stable. That's because it's got a very unique hull design, which I'll show you later.
Exmark, you find fish catch of the day.
Evan, how you doing? It's Tony Brecknock calling. I'm looking at your smallmouth bass and you're wearing a ski visor. You uploaded it to our app. I need to know. There's got to be a story back there, man.
We were out on Georgian Bay. It was a bit of a cold and windy day and a wet day. When you're blasting across the lake at full speed and it's 4 degrees out. If you don't have ski goggles, you can't see a single thing. Had some really large smallmouth bass. We landed a 6.52 pound and another 4-1 beside it. The U-Find Fish app, you know, was a great application. It helped it, so I ended up uploading it to the application after, so that other people can use my experience and go find those monster smallmouth bass.
Dynamite. Great picture. Excellent story. Thanks, brother.
Closed captioning is brought to you by Arctic Armor. Warm, dry, alive.
Years of research in Canada has shown that the vast majority of boaters who drowned, whether in a motorized or unmotorized boat, neglected very basic boating safety principles, like not wearing a PFD or not having the right gear in the boat in case there's cold water immersion, not checking the condition like waves, wind, or water temperature before going out. If you're going to be going out when there's cold water, boat smart. Always wear a PFD or a thermally insulated and floating Arctic Armor outfit. Hear that line. This guy picked it up nicely. He's a little bit bigger. Not big enough to use the net though. I lost a couple of them earlier on the hook set because I'm not using heavy line, and when you use, you know, jigs and so on, you got to drive that hook past the barb. So this guy actually was hooked okay. You can see the side of the hook sticking out there. So that's a good hook set. And it's also in a good spot because the tissue is a little bit lighter there as opposed to the roof of the mouth. Now you got to start somewhere. So I'm starting with the little guys first. Pretty largemouth. Now the way I've got my tube rigged, I actually have a snap on here which is going to help the tube from not sliding up over the hook. So what I'm doing is pushing the tube so that it's flush to where my snap is. And there's my hook. I've actually put it through the tube. I'm not fishing it weedless because I'm casting out in the open, but it's actually touching the tube. So it's pretty weedless. And then I have a 1/16 ounce bullet weight. If you want to fish it like a Carolina rig, all I have to do is slide that weight up the line. Then what'll happen, the weight will hit the bottom and the tube will take a little bit to drop down. And when fish are inactive, like November, when the water's pretty cold, that hang time of it dropping, they can inhale it a lot easier. But right now I'm doing it with the weight close, just like that. And I'm going to try firing out in the middle again. See if I can find a bigger fish. It's common, by the way, for the smaller fish to be more active and to have to work more for the larger fish. Why? I don't know, but it's quite common. So I'm letting that tube sink. It's just fluttering down very slowly. The color I'm using is like a pumpkin seed color with a little bit of flake, so it's natural. So I did make a few casts with my crankbait here, but before I move to the next area, and I'm going to cover the whole shoreline here, I'm going to alternate between the crankbait, so that's my, we'll call it active fish bait. I can cover water quick, and if there's a largemouth bass that does have a little bit of energy, he'll hit the crankbait. And then once I've done fishing the crankbait, then I'll put my soft plastic or Trigger X worm on or a tube and see if I can get some of the more lethargic fish that are near the bottom. There's a fish. Okay. This one's a bit bigger, but again, not net worthy. Maybe. It'll be easier for me to handle it, I guess, with the net. Oh, get out of the weeds. I figure it's just about 1.5 pounds. But you know what? I'm going to use the net just to be a sportsman, because this rubber net is ideal, because the fish, even if it thrashes around, it won't mess with it. You know, this is amazing when you think that I'm in this small craft, and it's so easy to fish out of. It's going to keep the net there so I can lower it back down. Now see, the hook isn't protruding out of the fish this time because I let the fish take it a little bit longer and the weight is a little bit further up. That means that it really inhaled it. Okay, nice little largemouth. I don't think anybody would mind catching even small fish like this in November, fishing out of NuCanoe. So I've got them in the water. I'm going to suspend them out a little bit. The water's so cold that their metabolism is slow, so it's no problem releasing them. And this is a nice shallow net. And, you know, look at the room I've got in here. I've got this pole, by the way. You might be wondering, if I've got a paddle, why do I have this pole? This is a piece of cedar that I was able to find in the bush. And when you're working, you know, casting from shallow to deep, it's actually ideal. You can actually pole around. I've seen on YouTube the people down in Florida, close to where we have our place, where they actually use the NuCanoes and they fish the mangrove shorelines. And even though they've got a paddle, they just use a bit longer pole and they pole around and then they stick it when they see fish approaching, especially on the flats.
Fisher girl! Catch the passion!
So for ladies that love to fish, this is the rod for you. I've tried and tested it, and it will catch big fish and small fish. It's a nice 6-foot medium action 2-piece rod, has the very nice spinning reel, the cork handle, a nice profile, and it makes one heck of a statement on the water.
It's got bling.
It does.
Yeah. Especially fishing in low light. And you know, this rod is ideal because it has a flexible enough tip and soft action that you can fish live bait, like a minnow rig on the bottom, or you can use a float, but you can also cast lures. It's got a stiff enough spine all day long. What I really like too is how tapered the connection is. Look, you can hardly tell.
It's almost seamless, really.
Yes, yeah, and if you take them apart, you can see that they fit perfectly, and the tip has this little rubber stub. When you put it in, it actually helps to keep the two pieces together. So it creates a little bit of a vacuum. Any woman would look good using this outfit, landing a big fish.
Absolutely.
It doesn't matter what kind of fishing we do, whether we drive to a fishing location and fish from shore or jump in our boat and go out on the water, we all need fuel to get there. Now, one thing we can do if we're conservation minded is try to lower the RPMs, especially in a boat that we're running at, to get from one spot to another. If you have a larger engine, like a 4-cylinder to an 8-cylinder motor, and it takes you about 3,000 RPMs to get on plane, once you get on plane, try to cruise at about 4,000 to 4,500 RPMs. You're still going to be traveling at a good speed, but you're going to be conserving energy. As soon as you run up over 5,000 or even go up to 6,000 RPMs, you're burning a lot more fuel. And really, the time you save is insignificant. So you know what? Do your part for conservation. Slow down if you're making a run of 20 minutes or more from getting to one spot to another. Okay, you know what? That cedar pole comes in very handy. Okay, I'm going to try this quick fish again. I've got it on the spinning rod because it's very light. You could add a split shot to it, but on even a number 5, that's called a Lure Jensen Quickfish number 5, on a slow retrieve, it'll go down to about 7, maybe even 8, 9 feet. Oh, it's a good sign, small fish. It'd be nice if I got into some of the larger fish. I'm trying to get through these small guys that are a lot more active. The nice thing about the quick fish is that it's got the hook at the back. So it's the first thing that the fish gets in his mouth when he goes for it. You know, over the last 30 years, I've used all kinds of crafts for fishing, out of everything from float tubes and little pontoon inflatable boats to huge 50, 60-foot boats, and all kinds of crafts like kayak and canoes. But I got to tell you, I'm impressed with this NuCanoe. It's actually a whole new type of technology, and what it combines is the stability of almost a pontoon boat, maybe because of its width and also the way the hull is contoured, but also the dynamics of a standard kayak, so you can move very quickly when it comes to paddling in high speed. Let me show you, first of all, how buoyant it is. If I step in it, you can see that it's very stable. And one thing that I'm impressed with, and I'll explain to you here, is that it's stable even with a high center of gravity. So I'm standing up, and you can see that it's not like a normal kayak or canoe where you have to sit down in it. Even when you're sitting up 10 inches off the floor, the stability that you have is amazing. So, and this is very comfortable because your knees aren't really scrunched, and this is a swivel seat like a bass boat. The other thing that I like about this type of seat is, you see this track that runs up both sides? All the accessories that are in here, whether it's the leaning bar that's here at the front, the 2 rod holders that we have set right here, my seat that's right here. Everything is attached with these wing nuts. See the one that I'm undoing here? That's how simple it is. To the rod holders that can move back and forth. The really nice feature about the leaning bar that I like, you see these pins that are right here? One here and one on the other side. You pull those pins and the other pin slides out and the whole leaning bar collapses down. Whether you're stowing it, you know, to put in a vehicle like a van, or whether you just want it down, you don't need it because maybe you're going to be doing a lot of paddling. It just packs down really neat. Now, the main thing about the NuCanoe is that it enables you to fish standing up. Now, I can be rocking and rolling, you know, and I don't have the best balance in the world. I'm getting on in age. But even without the leaning bar, it's so stable. But with the leaning bar, you just lean against it and literally you become one with the craft. So you can be fly fishing, you can be casting, hook a big fish, no problem. Extremely stable. Can you tell the water's cold? Look at this fish, how lethargic it is. It's kind of flopping on just below the surface. It's going to try to bring it in here. This is on the Husky Jerk, which is a very good lure when the water temperature drops. So I tried twitching it. Hey, I'm caught along the shoreline, which is perfect. So another small largemouth. Wish I was getting into some bigger fish. You know, when it comes to fishing out of a kayak, a canoe, or a NuCanoe, like the one I have been today, you can use almost any kind of conventional spinning or bait casting outfit. But I wanted to share with you that Rapala actually makes, under their North Coast line, a special edition kayak rod. If you read the label on the blank, you'll see that it says North Coast and then Kayak Special Edition rod. Now, what makes it special is a couple things. One, it's very lightweight. It's two-piece. You can see that it's got this PVC handle, and it also has a built-in ring. That ring is for a lanyard. The NuCanoe is nice and wide and very stable, so I didn't need a lanyard on any of the rods. But this bait caster is 6 feet long, and you can see that I've got an R-type bait casting reel with very light braid on it. Now, the other outfit that I was using, this is the Technique Specific two-piece. It's also made by Rapala. I like the color, it goes from blue to like a gray blank. But if you look here, you'll see that it's designed for crankbait fishing. And there's that crankbait that produced a lot of fish, the scatter crank. That's part of the Rapala series of crankbaits. So TS stands for Technique Specific, the 2 for 2 piece. And on here I have a Volt spinning reel, and it's loaded with the Suffix line. It's not the A32, but it's the braid. And actually they call it, I think, the ice braid. It's that orange color. I like it because it's high visibility. Now on both rods, I'm using a light fluorocarbon leader, 10-pound test, because there are some big fish that you can get, especially in the fall, even when the water gets colder. Boy, what a nice hit. To be honest with you, I thought it was on bottom. This is interesting in the NuCanoe. You know what though? Good control. Oh, it's a monster. Look at the size of this bass. I don't think he's ready yet. I'm gonna just get the net ready. Big fish. And I let Mulligan go on shore. Oh, I hope it's not stuck on weeds. Come here. Come on. Oh, look at the size of this bass. Oh, I can barely get it in the net. You know what? For November, this is a monster. I got to show you this fish. This has got to be one of the biggest largemouth I've caught. Oh, man. I've got it in this rubber net, and you know what? He's heavy. What a gorgeous fish. And it's interesting, I put on that Rapala scatter crank. I'm going to show you here in one sec. I don't know if I can do this with one hand. I was going to try pegging that because I'm on a shallow flat here. See if I can get this through the loop. Talk about tough doing this with one hand. Okay, got it through there. Okay, now you got to see this fish. I don't know how big he is, but he's huge. Look at the size. Look at the size of this largemouth. Can you see that Rapala scatter wrap in there? It inhaled it. trolling out of a NuCanoe. I'm gonna see if I can get that out first. I'm so excited here. I gotta get my pliers because I don't want to hurt this guy. He's a mammoth. You know, this is like the fish I was getting in Mexico. And this is a November largemouth. My hand's actually shaking because I've never caught such a big largemouth this late in the year with such cold water temperature. This guy must have been feeding to put on the weight for the winter time. Man, he's right back. Come here. Good. I got that lure out. Now, one more look. I'm not exaggerating. Can you see how long this fish is? Look at that. Is a huge largemouth. Here, I've got my push pole in the way. Is that a gorgeous largemouth? Caught out of a NuCanoe. First time using them, and you know what? I'm hooked. These are beautiful. You can see how easily I'm standing. No problem. You know what? I'm going to get this guy back in the water. I want to make sure that he grows even bigger. I'm glad that I've caught it in this cold water. It's such a beautiful animal. I feel like holding it up again. It's so huge. I can't get my hand around it. It's got to be like 7, 8 inches across the back. Big fish. Just going to let the front of the net go down. Look at mammoth. Come on, I'm playing with him a little bit. Man, that was a big fish. Now, you know, the lure I got it on, very interesting. Today I started fishing just by casting that scatter wrap. And here it is right here. It's a very bright color, you know, so some of you might think, well, that doesn't look like a natural color of a bait fish. But for some reason, when fish get aggressive, and even though this water's cold, that big largemouth just inhaled this thing. Now, the special reason why they call it a scatter wrap is when you retrieve this, not only does it go from side to side, but it'll switch patterns. It'll go to the left, center, left, right. That's why it scatters. They call it a scatter wrap. This is actually the scatter crank. It's a little crankbait. It's only about, I'm guessing, maybe 5 to 7 centimeters long, but you know what? Very effective lure. And fish with the spinning outfit, by the way, this is the TS2. It's made by Rapala, and that stands for Technique Specific. You can see it right there on the blank. And if you can read the small writing, this is the actual cranking spinning rod. So it's ideal because it's 2-piece. It fires lures out like a bullet. And it has just the right action if you're using crankbaits.
Canadian sport fishing is brought to you by Suffix, the world's most hardcore fishing line. Yamaha, conquer outdoors. Insect Defend Patch, deep free protection from biting insects. Dickies, quality workwear since 1922.
You can see it's very thin. It's almost like hair or thread, but you know what? It's extremely strong. So this is the, I believe, 6-pound test, and it has the line diameter of 2-pound monofilament. So it's extremely thin. This one's also called a ghost color. It's almost like a white color. So it does really blend into the water nicely, but I still like to use a fluorocarbon leader. And what I'm holding up in my right hand is the Suffolk fluorocarbon leader material. Now I have to tell you, just because a spool of line says fluorocarbon doesn't mean that it's fluorocarbon leader material. Because you can get fluorocarbon that's actually castable, very soft to use on your spinning reel or bait casting reel.